For the longest time, foldable phones have felt like this cool, futuristic science experiment that almost works, but never quite crosses a finish line for the average user. Every single year, the same cycle repeats. Samsung releases a new Z Fold, Google tries their hand with the Pixel Fold, and the tech world holds its breath. But then the same question inevitably pops up. Okay, but when is Apple doing it? Because let's be honest, the moment Apple steps into a category, that is when the technology actually becomes mainstream. It's the iPad effect. It's the Apple Watch effect. And according to the latest 2026 supply chain leaks, that moment of transition is finally close. New leaks are pointing directly to Apple's first ever foldable iPhone, currently dubbed the iPhone Fold or iPhone Air Fold by industry insiders. And if this information from the 2026 roadmap is accurate, this isn't just Apple making another folding phone. This looks like a complete ground-up rethink of how a foldable should be engineered in the first place. You see, most companies focus on a wow factor of the screen, but Apple is obsessing over the one thing that has plagued foldables since day one: long-term durability. Some of these leaked choices are peak Apple, and they start with something that sounds small, but is actually a massive engineering pivot. Let's talk about the buttons. According to a high-accuracy leak from Weibo tipster Instant Digital, the volume buttons on this iPhone Fold won't be located where you expect. Instead of the traditional left side placement we've seen on every iPhone since the original in 2007, they are reportedly moving to the top right edge. If that sounds familiar, it's because it's much more iPad mini energy than classic iPhone, and there's a strategic reason for this shift. Apparently, Apple has managed to place the motherboard entirely on the right side of the foldable chassis. This is a radical departure from the competition. In most folding phones, components are spread across both halves, which necessitates running thick, complex ribbon cables directly through the hinge. Over time, those cables become weak points, prone to fraying or snapping after thousands of folds. By concentrating everything on one side, Apple is minimizing the number of cables that actually have to cross that hinge. Fewer cables crossing the fold zone means fewer failure points. In other words, Apple is prioritizing durability and structural integrity over internal symmetry. It's a classic Apple move, solving a problem that others have just learned to live with. On that same right edge, you'll also find the power button, and this is where the hardware leaks get really interesting. The report suggests this button will integrate Touch ID. Yes, you heard that correctly. Touch ID is making a comeback. After years of Face ID being the absolute default on high-end iPhones, Apple is reportedly bringing back fingerprint authentication built into the power button. And honestly, it makes perfect sense for this form factor. A foldable design complicates Face ID sensor alignment because the phone is constantly changing shapes, closed, half-folded, or fully open. Touch ID is simple, it's reliable, and it doesn't care how the phone is positioned relative to your face. Also reportedly sitting on that right side is the dedicated camera control button we saw debut on the iPhone 16. This leaves the left side of the device completely clean. No buttons, no cutouts, just a smooth, uninterrupted frame of polished titanium or aluminum. It sounds like a subtle change, but that kind of visual minimalism and clean aesthetic is exactly the sort of visual clarity Apple obsesses over. Now let's look at the displays. On the outer cover screen, instead of a notch or even a dynamic island-style pill, the leaks claim we are getting a single punch-hole camera. If this turns out to be true, it will be the cleanest front design Apple has ever shipped. No heavy visual elements competing for your attention, just pure edge-to-edge screen. Flip it around, and the back gets just as interesting. The iPhone Fold is rumored to feature a dual camera setup housed in what's being described as an iPhone Air-style camera plateau. Think of it as a flatter, more subtle camera bump instead of the chunky, square modules we've seen on the Pro models lately. 2 sensors, an LED flash, and a microphone, all controlled minimalist and not screaming for attention. But the real story, the one that will actually sell this phone, is hidden inside. Foldables have always had one massive, deal-breaking compromise: battery life. When you're cramming 2 displays, complex mechanical hinges, and split internals into a thin body, something has to give. Usually it's endurance. However, the 2026 leak suggests Apple is using a stacked internal design. instead of spreading batteries thin across both halves. They are reportedly stacking high-density layers of hardware to free up space for a significantly larger battery capacity than what we see in the Z Fold 6 or Pixel Fold. If Apple manages to deliver genuine Pro Max level battery life in a slim folding chassis, that won't just be a win, it will be a game changer. It's not about the folding screen itself anymore. It's about the practicality. Apple doesn't usually rush into new categories. They wait, they watch, they study exactly what Samsung, Huawei, and Google did wrong. They let the pioneers take the arrows in their backs so that when Apple finally arrives, they can offer a refined, finished version of the technology. The rumored debut window is September 2026, which aligns perfectly with Apple's traditional fall launch cycle. If that timing holds, imagine the one more thing energy in the Steve Jobs theater. Tim Cook finishes the standard iPhone 18 updates, and then the Fold. Instantly, it becomes the most talked about device in a decade. But the bigger question remains, is this the foldable that makes the people who have ignored the category for years finally care? Is this the device that turns foldables from tech enthusiast experiments into something your parents actually want to buy? Or will it remain a high-end showcase product, impressive and expensive, but ultimately a niche luxury? Either way, if these leaks are even half true, Apple isn't just making a folding phone. They are redesigning the very foundation of how a mobile computer should work from the inside out. And if there's one company on earth that knows how to turn interesting technology into, I absolutely need that, it's Apple. So, the real question is for you. If Tim Cook stands on that stage in September and announces this for $1,499, are you folding on day one? Or are you waiting to see if it unfolds perfectly? Let me know your thoughts in the comment below. I read every single one. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more 2026 Apple Roadmap updates. I'll see you in the next one.